Hello, Namaste. My name is Dr. Prashant Muthukrishnan, and I thank you all for the wonderful opportunity here to share my proposal for education of asthma educators and other nursing staff, as well as physician researchers in the field of pulmonary medicine, as well as asthma and other specialties. Today's topic is proposal for body-mind-metabolic phenotyping, and I'm representing American Thoracic Society Integrative Therapies Group in this approach. One of the first papers that I worked on with an Ayurvedic physician back in New York when I was at Albert Einstein Bronx was understanding the stool chart, the quality and the characteristics of the stool of patients, and correlating that with their underlying metabolic phenotype as well as their gut microbiome health. And using the Bristol chart, we were able to correlate whether severe versus non-severe asthma had any relationship with extremes of stool types, being extremely liquid versus extremely hard and dry, as one of the simple questions that we proposed. So my hope today is to categorize asthmatics based on not just the regular eosinophilic, non-eosinophilic, or allergic, non-allergic, obesity, or neutrophilic, etc. kinds of asthma, but much more profound, scientifically sound concept from Ayurveda, which is a physiology and anatomical study of the human body from India that is spreading all over the world. And we are using body, mind, and metabolic phenotypes across the asthma population to try to see whether we can segregate these patients based on this particular phenotypic analysis. And the background behind this information is just like Mayan medicine or Chinese Humorisms from TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, as well as Roman medicine, Greek medicine, we have various Humorisms, and the elements of nature that make our body, human body and mind, are very similar in all these systems of medicine. Air, space, fire, water, and earth. These combine in different permutation combinations to give rise to three Humorisms according to Ayurveda. And each person has unique proportions of these energies, because energy becomes matter, matter can become back to energy, right? They change in constitution in response to time, season, environment, and what you consume. And therefore, that's why it's very important that we understand that we are a continuum with the environment around us, and that it plays a role in our health and disease. And there are different types of Humorisms, as I meant, temperaments, as well as body type, the way you behave, the way you talk, the way you think, the ability to grasp certain things, the ability to keep calm, the ability to be having a higher tendency to move as against somebody else who is more grounded or less mobile. So all these things I defer you to at leisure. You can go through these slides and understand what type of personality are you belonging to, right? And my main slide, this is the main slide that I want to get your thoughts on, is can you as an asthma educator join me in this approach or effort to help the patient understand what type of phenotype do they have more, because all these three endotypes are part of our body. For example, each person can have a little bit of air and space, a little bit of fire and water, and a little bit of earth and water. But then the reason why we are all so unique but still kind of similar is because we have such subtle variations of these three Humorisms. For example, some people are thin and tall, but they still have red moist lips, and they're very sharp. They tend to sweat a lot, right? And there are various famous personalities that have been already pointed out in literature that belong to certain of these characteristics. And just like the human body, the universe around us, the seasons, are also because of these three combinations of natural elements. And therefore, you would see that the winter months, for instance, the drier months, are likely to make patients prone for certain kinds of health complaints, depression, mentally, more likelihood in the winter season or the gloomier seasons. And all these have a scientific reason behind it because of the transformation of energy between our elements as well as the environment's elements. And therefore, within a single day, there is certain things that have to be done at certain points of time, and then alone the body will sustain its circadian rhythm or a balance, which is very well known these days after the Nobel Prize was given to the mechanisms controlling circadian rhythm. For example, morning times are extremely beneficial if the person makes it useful for studies rather than continuing. So if you sleep beyond a certain point of time in the morning, then those elements in the nature are not in sync with what your actions are, and therefore that gives rise to a lot of disease. For example, people who wake up late have and the characteristics of people who are grounded, who are not waking up early in the morning, that is kapha, that is earth, down to earth, heavy. But then it's already vata, time of the day, so the air is moving, there is breeze in the early morning, so you are not in sync with the environment outside, and therefore that leads to a lot of complications, including delay in the circadian rhythm, late breakfast, and potentially gastrointestinal symptoms, as well as sinus congestion, tendency to be obese, and so on. And very well documented in literature that these phenotypes are not just manifest in the body, but actually they go all the way down into the genome as well. And the genetic makeup combines with epigenetic influences from the atmosphere or the environment, and there are 52 SNPs that have shown significant difference between these three endotypes, between the Vata, Pitta, and Kapha endotypes. Famous personality right there is Audrey Hepburn. Classic of Vata predominant, air and space predominant. When you have air and space in control, in nice balance, then you have mental alertness, enthusiasm, sound sleep, normal digestion, and so on. Creativity. These guys love to move. You've seen certain thin people who always like to keep running, right? And that's where, as long as you maintain a balance of how much time you spend running or moving, that creates a balance in you. If you overdo anything, even if it may sound like a good idea, moderation is the key, right? When you go out of balance, then, for example, extreme amounts of movements, including a lot of schedule changes, unpredictability in schedules, there you are not able to find a balance in resting, closing your eyes, meditating, or just finding a time of relaxation during a busy day. If you don't get that chance, then that's when you start having symptoms that arise from the exaggeration or overwhelming of the air and the space elements that have a lot of role in our body, including the gastrointestinal system, the respiratory system, the nervous impulses, all these electrical signals that pass from neurons, from one neuron to another. They are a manifestation of the air and the space element, and therefore when there are exaggerated schedules or activities that are prone towards movement, then you end up having symptoms such as dry or rough skin, sensitive digestion, fluctuating appetites, tension headaches, insomnia, the inability to ground yourself, the inability to not do anything and just be mindful and find 5 minutes of just being in the moment, right? So these people are prone for hypertension, very, very classic hypertension, plantar fasciitis, dry skin. Arthritis also is an element of dryness, because when air and space are predominant, then it's dry, and that's when the joints get dry and so on. So these may sound very holistic, right? And there is a significant amount of scientific evidence and science behind behind all of this, and I'll quote as we go here. So how do we bring back Vata into balance? Is by routines, and I hope that this will go a long way in our asthma patients. If you can, elicit this kind of a history from them. How is their social life? Is it fully super filled with activities, or are they finding any unpredictable schedules, etc.? So warm, soupy foods will help you ground yourself, avoiding addictive behaviors, right, and building confidence. Okay, another example for the next permutation combination of these elements, which is Pitta, fire and water, is Steve Jobs. Warm body temperature. Usually they're warm to touch. They're very sharp intellect. They catch everything very, like a fire, and they want certain things that they wanted. Right? They're not so flexible. Right? Fire burns everything. Right? Abundance of energy. They'll do anything that they can to get something achieved. Right? When this goes out of balance, they're usually angry, short-tempered. They tend to have more loose bowel movements. Kind of less formed. Acid reflux is classic in these patients. So a person who has a lot of Vata, which is somebody who's thin and flexible and innovative, creative, can still have this component of their human body, right? Because everybody has to have some amount of all of these three machines in their body, right? We need fire. Each person has to have some fire and water in their body. So all of these exist in each individual, but based on the activities or actions that you commit, you are likely to exaggerate or depress these machines that run in your body based on the actions as well as the environment that you're in. For example, if you are in a very hot, humid atmosphere or environment, then you are likely to have exaggerations of symptoms that come from this particular phenotype, which is Pitta. And you will see asthma more common with the first and the third, Vata and Kapha. A simple example is air and space driven. The direction of the air, that airflow within the lungs, has a lot to do with Vata. And there are two kinds of asthma that we see sometimes. Is airflow predominant dysfunction, whereas the other one is sinus congestion or mucus predominant asthma. And there's also the third kind, which is inflammation predominant asthma, and you'll see that eosinophilia is present. Pheno is high, but then they're short of breath, but there's not much of a wheezing component. They just feel air trapping or chest discomfort, chest tightness. So there's different subtle versions of asthma, and they actually stem from what underlying phenotype or endotype that you are messing with. And how do we bring back this to balance? So usually people who are fire predominant, they are always goal oriented, accomplishing things, and it's okay for these guys to not be competitive in everything that they achieve, that they perform in life. It's okay to be more playful. Even if you play a sport, it's better to be informal, leisure, rather than a competitive sport. A simple example, right? And it's better to avoid arguments, because the more anger you get, the more you aggravate your endotype of the Pitta. So I'll leave you to at your leisure. You can spend time on these slides. You can pause the video and go for this. Similarly, the third most important component of our body is Kapha, earth and water, common in asthmatics who are obese. Not necessarily all the time have to be obese, but they're big, right? Kapha, earth, is big in nature, not necessarily fat, because there's a difference between fat content or subcutaneous tissue as against a big body build. And only when your kapha element goes out of balance, then you're likely, to get more deposition of fatty tissue as well as heavy subcutaneous tissue. So when kapha is in balance, then you're strong, you're big build, you're very affectionate, because earth is down to earth, right? These guys are super loving. They love to cook, they love to serve. I'm sure you have classic big mamas in your family who love to feed kids, and they're usually generous, they are loving, they're down to earth and super supportive, calm, they don't get anxious too much. And let me tell you, there you may be obese, you may be a loving mama, but you still can have a component of your vata, right, the air and space element, that's completely out of balance. If you have a terrible schedule all over the place, and you are running out of gas, because of so much of things to accomplish during a day, and that will make you anxious. And you may think, well, you just told me that a person who's kapha is usually calm. Yes, as long as their other element, which is vata, is also in balance, right? So, that's why the best way to identify these people is to go through the questionnaire, and that's my main goal of today's topic, is that I'm hoping you can find this questionnaire scientifically sound, and it makes logistic sense for patients to learn these skills for themselves and ask themselves these questions and see where they're going out of balance, and trying to find a synchrony and a balance between all of their three different machines that run in their body. Because there's a machine that makes us want to be very flexible and do one thing after the other. There's another machine that tells us, no, I want to be focused, I'm going to do this. As against the third person, there's another machine in us that says, I don't want to do anything, I'm just going to stay calm and lazy, right? So we have to find a balance between these three, and that's just an example for the mental part, right? Similarly, there's bodily organ examples of how these three different machines work in our body. And I leave the rest of the slide for your own leisure. So these are classic examples of these three different phenotypes, predominant phenotypes. But each of these guys have vata, pitta, and kapha. But then kapha predominant people, examples would be Oprah, Martin Luther King, right? And vata predominant person would be Audrey Hepburn, for an example. And famous pitta people, John F. Kennedy, Steve Jobs, examples, right? And on top, one of the most important things that you can take out from this lecture is bitter, pungent, and astringent, BPA, foods are very helpful to bring down kapha, which is earth and water, because these guys, bitter, pungent, and astringent, are light, so they make you lighter. If you are already heavy by nature, right, by constitution, not necessarily that you have to be thin or obese or big build, but if you have a heaviness in your constitution, people who feel heavy after even having half of their meal, right? So it's better if they go for lighter foods. Most of Ayurveda is based out of constitution of the food rather than calorie counting. And the best strategy for integrative therapies group would be a combination of both calorie counting as well as the nature of the food. Vata people who are Vata predominant are better off if they eat grounding foods, which are usually sweet, salt, and sour foods. Not artificial sweeteners, but sweet by nature. For example, melons, watermelons, example, fruits that are sweeter rather than sour, and those are some examples. Sweet potatoes, some of these vegetables, examples. And then pitta people who are fiery, they need more calming stuff, right? Sweet foods are also helpful for them. So there's totally 6 different tastes, right? You see 6 different tastes, and 3 for each of these types are beneficial. Sweet, bitter, and astringent. SBA is good for Pitta people. SSS is good for Vata people. So my objective and methodology is to trying to reclassify our patients in our clinics based on this particular phenotype questionnaire, and helping them to formulate their own individualized lifestyle modification therapies, whether it's part of clinical trials or outside of clinical trials. And I invite you to reach out to me to see if I can share this knowledge. There's so many Ayurvedic physicians around, and I'm certified in Ayurveda under Maharishi Institute of Management in Iowa. So I'll be happy to share the think tank of the Ayurvedic part, and I'm hoping that you guys can bring in your own perspective into this, whether it's statistics, whether it is asthma education, as a nursing, etc. And we basically are going to submit these questionnaires to subjects of various networks or cohorts or registries or your regular clinics, and then this will really help us expand our perception of asthma beyond eosinophils, allergy, etc. And along with this, I'm hoping that we expand the understanding of Ayurvedic medicine much broader than what the NIH website is actually coding, because Ayurveda is not a medicine. It is 90% lifestyle, 10% medicine, right? Similarly, Western medicine ideally is supposed to be 90% lifestyle medicine, which is now becoming really, really famous, American Board of Lifestyle Medicine, and I'm also certified in that, and I'm a diplomat of the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine. And even if the questionnaire of Ayurveda is so kind of out there, and if you feel that it's too complicated, then I've actually formalized a much simpler questionnaire which pertains to whether these patients are likely to be involved in 6 of the lifestyle medicine pillars. That should be a good enough start, right? And daily routines and seasonal routines, right? These are some of the most important actions that these patients can perform that will go a long way in finding themselves a balance in all these 3 phenotypes within their body. And you can pause the video here and do it for yourself and see whether these are achievable, feasible, and you don't have to perform all of these in one single day. You can try to find certain days of the week conducive for this. And this is one of the initial papers that I mentioned about the stool, nature of the stool, how that goes a long way in correlating with severity of asthma or whether your asthma is under control or not. So your gut has a lot to tell how your asthma is doing, and that's why we do see irritable bowel syndrome symptoms in some of the asthmatics. And so the gut is actually the starting point of any influence that we get from the environment or all the actions we perform. For example, if we sleep late, if we eat late, not on time, if we get through a stressful day without being able to eat or drink or being able to pass stools, all these nervous impulses that pass through us are getting out of synchrony with the circadian rhythm or the biological clock, right? And that's when these 3 elements, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, or the 5 elements, right? Water, space, air, earth, and fire, they get out of sync, and that's when we start having symptoms. And initially we get symptoms on a daily basis. We get migraine headaches or tension headaches, and we use certain supportive medications like Tylenol to suppress these symptoms. And as they build on, they do manifest in the form of chronic diseases, including hypertension, asthma, irritable bowel syndrome, reproductive system symptoms, including dysmenorrhea and so on. So I do see a lot of patients in my asthma clinic who also have had a history of endometriosis, dysmenorrhea, fibroids, and I will tell you more if you are interested how Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine and Greek medicine and Roman medicine have beautifully documented that they are not they're not unrelated to each other. It's just that these dysregulations of the machines that run in our body, the 3 machines, are manifesting in different organs at different times with different symptoms, and that's how we go there. There's only one or few whole system Ayurvedic interventions that are very nicely published in our Blue Journal. And basically, phenotype specific Ayurvedic intervention was used here, and they found how it ameliorated asthma symptoms, not just based on symptom questionnaire, but also through cytokine studies, how this was seen in both pulmonary function tests as well as cytokine markers, where there was decrease in Th2 cell markers, Th1 pro-inflammatory, and how the immunosuppressive markers were increased after a set of actions or healing daily routines, including simple things like massaging the body, dry massage, skin massage, mindfulness, meditation, certain routines such as taking warm liquids, warm soups for certain phenotypes as against cooling foods for the other phenotypes. And I leave again you to review this at your own leisure. You can pause this video at any point of time and go through these details, not just symptoms as well as pulmonary function, but also all the way down to the genome. Genome-wide association studies have been correlated very well with individual phenotypes with specific parts of the genome, and how they correlate with metabolism, right, or metabolism, including fat metabolism, cholesterol tendencies, and how they absorb hemoglobin, iron levels, and so on. So I will share this questionnaire with you on request, or it's all over the internet. You can look up either Deepak Chopra's or Maharishi Ayurveda's Dosha questionnaire or Phenotype Ayurveda questionnaire. Right? It's both for your mental, your body metabolism, as well as the way you eat and how you pass stools and so on. And I've also shared already with you how the nature of the foods that you eat will be able to help bring back a balance in these three machines. And I've also published a case report on how this whole system approach beautifully led to improvement of pulmonary function tests, as well as asthma symptom control in this patient of mine who had severe asthma as well as connective tissue disease, even without having any weight loss. And we know for a long time that the microbial diurnal rhythmicity has a lot to do with how our physiology works, and how it when it's not in good balance, then it's likely to cause chronic disease, and how the gut-lung axis work with each other, causing a correlation between gut symptoms as well as pulmonary diseases. Women's health, I'm hoping to spread more knowledge about women's health, how reproductive and gynecological symptoms have a lot to do with asthma and other pulmonary hypertension, etc. And I'm hoping to find interest amongst you all to see if you're interested in taking this to your clinic and sharing. And very very subtle ideas such as finding any outcomes amongst patients who attend cardiac rehab, and how their chronic comorbid lung disease is getting better. And so this was the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. That's a much simpler Americanized or westernized way of Ayurvedic concepts. And I'm hoping that this will be a great start to find out, hey, how is your physical activity? How is your eating habits? How is your stress management? How is your sleep hygiene? How is your relationship with the rest of the society? And substance use will be a great start. And then you go to the next level saying, okay, let me ask you more questions. What kind of foods are you likely to eat more than the other, right? Because certain patients are more into sweet, salt, sour, as against bitter, pungent, and astringent. And there has to be a balance in all 6 tastes. And that's when we create a balance. Okay, so I'm requesting an opportunity to work with you all to find support in a research team or a clinical team from asthma education or ILD, Dr. Ganesh Raghu, and so on. I'm trying to reach out to these folks and see if we can spread these amongst our patients and other physician communities and nursing communities. Okay, this is a pleasure to share this content with you, and hoping to hear back from you. And my name is again Dr. Prashant Muthakrishnan, and I have some content online on my web pages, Muthu Lifestyle Medicine as well as Ayurvedic medicine. And we are working with the integrative therapy group as part of American Thoracic Society. And please give me feedback. We'll be happy to hear from you. Thank you so much.